Royal Day Off by Spideremblembrony. Chapter 1, only chapter. All that was needed was a day off. That's all she wanted. As the sun shined brightly through the glass of her window, it slowly crept up to her face. Her eyes began to twitch as the sun assaulted her eyes, causing her discomfort. She opened her eyes slowly with a groan. Her vision was blurred out as she attempted to take in her surroundings. The rays assaulting her eyes caused her to shut them almost immediately. She placed her pale white hose on her face and rubbed it gently. Her mouth opened to a gentle yawn. Her stiff body was slow to awaken as she stretched her forelegs as far as she could. Her eyelids opened once more. Her hazy vision began to dissipate. Her eyes were greeted to the sunlight bursting through the window in several rays of bright yellow, illuminating the entire room. A bright blue curtain fluttered as the sun gentled from a breeze. The sounds of birds chirping filled the silence, almost as if they wanted every point to greet the morning with a song. Celestia smiled as she laid under the covers of her blanket. The bright blue sky spoke volumes of the beautiful day ahead. There was not a cloud in the sky. The fields were green and bursting with life. The birds were full of energy, continually chirping without rest. She could even hear the young chicks singing their own song. The sun's energy seemed to be feeding the energies of everything it touched. Celestia wanted nothing more than to go out in the world and just run in the fields. It took all her restraint to keep her in bed. Today is going to be the best day ever! The blue filly unleashed a series of coughs as the much larger alicorn trotted into the room. She lay in her bed, wrapped tightly in her dark blue blanket. She shivered as she dug her head deeper in the pillow. Luna, honey, are you all right? A white alicorn with a long red mane came to the bedside and placed her hose on the blue alicorn's head. I don't feel so good, Mommy, Luna whimpered as she slowly turned to her mother. The white alicorn exhaled as she placed her hoof on Luna's cheek. Oh, you poor thing, she whispered into her ear. You're burning up. Luna let out a series of coughs, each one sounding worse than the last. The filly slowly started to lean up as if to rise from her bed. The white alicorn placed her hooves on Luna's shoulders. And what do you think you're doing? Luna coughed again. I have a class with Mr. Stosswell. She lowered her head as tears started to form in her eyes. I don't want to miss class. The white alicorn smiled and shook her head. She kissed Luna on the forehead and gently leaned her back on the pillow. You are staying right here until you get better. A look of concern gripped Luna's face as she stared into her mother's eyes. What about Stosswell? I'll talk to him. She gently stroked Luna's face. You just get better. Her horn started to glow as a tiny purple monkey gently floated up to Luna. Luna smiled and wrapped her hose around it, giving a gentle giggle. The queen laughed along with her as she kissed her on the cheek. The white alicorn rose from the bedside and made her way to the door, leaving Luna curled up on her bed. She turned towards the room on the other window on the other side of the room, slipping under the covers. She smiled as she watched the sun's rays into her room. You done, Tia? Celestia carefully placed a warm rag over her face, just above her eyes and below her horn. Her face started to sweat as she silently waited for the host steps to approach her door. Celestia leaned over two buckets sitting on the floor, just away from her bed. She dipped her hose into the bucket filled with ice water. She shivered as the freezing cold chilled her front hose. Despite the discomfort, Celestia kept her ears open and paid close attention to beyond the door. No doubt the maid or her mother would come to the door to waken her. She took a deep breath, trying to ignore the cold for as long as she could. Celestia smiled as she patiently waited, removing her front hose from the pail every once in a while. She took the excess water off from her hose and would place it in the bucket once more. Celestia focused her magic on the warm cloth on her forehead. She knew it would be only a few moments before they arrived. The sound of footsteps approached the door. Celestia quickly removed the cloth from her head and placed it in the bucket. She quickly used her magic to engulf the ice bucket beside her. She then pushed the bucket out of her bed and out of her sight. As the door slowly started to open, Celestia dropped back into her bed and wrapped in her blankets. Celestia faked a series of coughs as her mother entered the room. Her mother came to her bedside and eyed Celestia. Oh no, not you too. Celestia coughed again. Ahem. Me too, Mother, Celestia replied, rasping her voice to sound as weak as possible. Her mother placed a hoof on her face, feeling the warmth and sweat. Luna is sick, and apparently so are you. Celestia gave a weak smile. You always said you wanted us to share everything. She gave a laugh before she interrupted herself of her cacking. Her mother gave a chuckle and smiled. This is not what I meant. She gently stroked Celestia's face, and her other hoof felt her hoof. Her eyes widened as the cold and wet hoof stole her attention. She ran to her host and Celestia's. Celestia, your hoofs are clammy. Celestia slowly rose with a moan. I need to get up. I need to attend Star Swirl's class. Her mother shook her head and giggled. You sound like Luna. She placed her hose on Celestia's shoulders and gently rested her against her bed. You need to lie down and get some rest. Her horn started to glow as she set the warm blue blanket over Celestia. Now, I have an important meeting with the Griffin King, but if you really need me, ask the maid to send for me. Her horn glowed as the dresser next to her opened to allow a bell to be lifted from it. Her mother placed it on the nightstand. You just ring this bell if you need a maid. I'll make sure that you let you rest otherwise. She leaned forward and kissed Celestia on the cheek. I love you, Tia. Celestia smiled as her eyes met with her mother's. I love you too, Mother. Her mother placed a hug gently on her cheek and then rose to her feet. Celestia coughed as her mother left the room, the door closing tightly behind. Celestia laid in bed, almost waiting for her to re-enter the room. When they didn't, she leapt out of bed and slightly screaming, Yes! She skipped to the window, opening it wide, allowing her to feel the soft breeze against her body. Every ounce of her body wanted to leap out the window and fly across the countryside. But she still had one thing to pick up before leaving. She looked at the distant mirror on the other side of the room and noted the spikes forming on her head that looked like branches on a tree. She sighed as she pursed herself in front of the mirror. She lifted her hairbrush with her magic and started to straighten and tangle the clump of mess that was her mane. Some days she hated her mane and hated brushing its entirety, but loved it when it was presentable. The brush glided through her mane, undoing the snags within it. Every knot it encountered, she grumbled under her breath and forced the brush against it. She brushed and brushed against it, causing a tight tingling at the base of the skull. She couldn't help but let a discontented grunt as she freed her hair from another knot. After a few long minutes, her mane finally resembled something nice. Her pink hair gently rested against her chest, rolling against her back with a large portion hanging towards the ground. She closely examined her mane again, smiling at her progress. The sight of her presentable mane seemed to lift her spirits. Looking out the window seemed to remind her of the day she had planned. She was about to leap out the window when her mind stopped her in her tracks. She was supposed to be asleep. She knew that the maid would be in later to check if she was awake. She turned her bed, which had been turned into a mess of chaos by her excited leap. Her blanket was hanging off the bed only by a small portion, leaving it most of it on the floor. One corner of her sheet had been removed from the mattress during the course of the night. If the maid walked into that, her cover would be blown. She focused her attention on the bed. Her horn glowed as she moved the sheet back into its proper place. She engulfed the pillows and blanket with her magic, and then moved them back into bed. Neatly and carefully, she placed the pillows under the blanket, hoping to fool any onlookers that that lump was actually her. You know, I've never actually tried that. Once satisfied with her ruse, she gazed out the window. The sun seemed to illuminate the field of green brightly, as if they were inviting her to join the merriment. She inhaled the summer air as its warmth seemed to fill her body, giving her a burst of energy. She leaped off the balcony. Her wings spread out as she started to glide towards her sister's room, just on the other side of the tower. Luna had looked so frightened when she had mentioned she was going to miss Star Swirl's class. Queen Faust couldn't help but think Luna was a little silly for such a thought. True, they had spent most of their days with their top general, a pony not known for his patience, but that was not a reason to be petrified for fear of missing a day. Star Swirl was more than reasonable, and an old friend. If any pony was less intimidating, they would be a beautiful butterfly. Queen Faust ran into the magic hall, where Star Swirl kept his lessons. The guard nodded as he approached the doorway.
Good morning, your highness.
Faust gave a genuine smile. Good morning, Sir Apple. Faust entered the room where Star Swirl stood in front of the row of students lined up in front of him. Unicorns of every size, shape, and color turned their attention to her as she entered the room. Good morning, your highness, the children greeted in unison.
Star Swirl bowed his head. Good morning, my queen.
Faust nodded. Thank you, everybody, and good morning. She started to approach Star Swirl. Star Swirl raised his head until his eyes met with a slightly taller unicorn.
Today is the day of mating of the Griffin King, is it not? Sarso smiled. I wish you the best of luck today, your highness.
Faust nodded and smiled. The Griffin King was on his way, and would no doubt arrive within the hour. She had been preparing for this day for months, planning every event that could go wrong and taking proper measures to prevent them. This was going to be the most important day in Equestria sword history since it would succeed. Thank you, but that is not the reason I am here. She looked down and shook her head. I am afraid that Celestia and Luna will not be attending class today. The group of students started to murmur among themselves. One of them finally spoke up. Are they okay? Another student. Did something happen to them?
Is there anything we can do?
Who are you? Faust almost giggled as the students continued to express their concern, with worries ranging from a broken limb to a monster snatching them up in the middle of the night. She rolled her eyes and smiled. No, the girls are just a little sick. She then turned her attention back to Star Swirl. I hope you will excuse them for class today.
Star Swirl smiled under his beard and bowed his head. Of course, Your Majesty. I will pardon them.
Faust placed her hoof on Star Swirl's shoulder. Thank you, Star Swirl. A voice came from behind her.
Your Highness!
Faust turned to see a purple stallion bow his head.
The Griffin King will be arriving soon.
Faust nodded her head. Thank you, Sir Roland. She then turned back to Star Swirl and giggled. Duty calls. As she turned out the room, she heard a collection of students' voices wishing to her children speedy recoveries. It warmed her heart to know that her children were so loved by her other students. Her children were always gentle and kind, even if they were a little rambunctious. Celestia, especially, was a tad spirited, and would always somehow drag Luna into her mischievous side. But she knew that deep down, Celestia would never add damage to her out of spite or rebellion. She simply wanted to have fun, and she had a large quantity of energy. Like the sun, she wanted to share it with the world, and that made her a lot of fun to be around. Faust almost frowned. Celestia needed to learn to control her lust for attention. She needed to learn not to overshadow others with her light, but needed to guide them. Faust shook her head and smiled. She convinced herself that Celestia was just young and would one day learn. And Luna, she was so shy. She was lucky to have Celestia help her make friends, but she was always alone. Faust often wondered what Luna would do without her sister's guidance. She often considered herself blessed that Celestia adored her little sister. They both needed each other, even if Celestia didn't quite know it. But for now, kids will be kids, she thought as she followed her knights to meet with the Griffin King. Luna sat on her bed, waiting for her sister to enter her room from the window. She remained perfectly silent as she waited. The sun was beautiful that day. Every pony loved the sun. The way it shined brightly over land and illuminated the world with its rays, it seemed to give life to everything around it. But she was different. She loved the moon. She couldn't answer why. She felt a strange connection to it every time she looked upon it. So lonely, save for the tiny stars that surrounded it, always in the shadow of the sun, and without any point to look upon her beauty. She would spend nights gazing upon the night sky, hearing the stories the stars would tell in her mind. The night sky was like a large storybook that she would always come back to. She heard a new tale each night, based on the stars in the sky. However, she often had no pony to share her stories with, save for toys, but that wasn't the same as a pony to talk to. Then, the image of her older sister appeared before her. Luna literally leaped up as her sister's smiling face greeted. Looks like it worked. Luna lowered her head. I don't know about this, Tia. She then looked up at her big sister into the room. What did we get called? Celestia made her way to the smaller filly. She placed herself on the bed, gently pushing away the collection of stuffed animals that Luna had. Ah! God! Stop! That's it! I have this feeling I'm going to die of diabetic shock before this fix over! We're not going to get caught, she said, wrapping her foreleg around her. Luna shifted her gaze to the floor and bit her lip. Tia, maybe we shouldn't do this. Celestia was always the brave one. She always had a plan and knew how she was going to execute it. She envied her creativity. All she could do was paint pictures with single dots and bright colors. Celestia would always say she had talent, but she was never sure. She wished she shared her sister's boundless confidence. Celestia gave a smile and giggled. Her horns started to glow as she lifted a brush resting on the nightstand. The breast started to slightly stroke Luna's mane. Why wouldn't we do this, Luna? Luna felt the breast pressing against her mane, and Celestia gently pulled towards her. She felt a knot in her head that Celestia was able to get out quickly. She frowned, wondering if Celestia ever got knots in her head. Luna was silent, her head drooping to the ground. Celestia continued as she gently tilted her sister's head back up. We were stuck in survival camp for 6 weeks. I think we deserve a day off. Luna's memory started to replay in her mind. Survival camp was a miserable 6 weeks of intense physical activities. Their instructor was a strict, uncompromising, merciless loudmouth who would put them and the other students through rigorous training. Waking up before the dawn, surviving off the land, long hikes without the use of magic or their wings. Celestia and Luna hated it. The only reason they survived was because they had each other to lean on. Okay, One Piece fans, how many of you are thinking Ace and Luffy? Show of hands. The truth was, Luna wasn't sure she would have made it without her big sister to protect her. Oft times, she wondered how Celestia was able to stand the instructor, smiling as she did. Even after their harshest training, that would be nearly cause for her to shrivel down and cry. Celestia would always wink and make a snarky remark, as if she didn't have a care in her world. Luna would start to chuckle and always feel better. When things got long and boring, Celestia's mind always came up with a plan to make them more exciting, much to the dismay of their coach. She made some of their most strenuous activities fun, such as painting a large wall they expected to climb over, and a pool party in the training pool. Every pony at the camp seemed to flock with them after learning their defiant ways. They shared the same mentality as Celestia. They just wanted to have fun. Luna couldn't help but feel a little more alone thinking about it. Most of the ponies were a little older than her, closer to Celestia's age. She was probably the youngest of the little group. They never treated her with any disrespect, but they seemed more interested in Celestia than her. When they finally survived the 6-week period, they were immediately placed in Star Swirl's magic class. Ever since that day, Celestia had been determined to have a day off. Celestia talked about it for weeks. It seemed to be all that was on her mind. Every time Luna found herself alone with Celestia, she would hear about the new fun activity they would do on their day off. She must have had more than 100 ideas by the time she finally put her plan into motion. Luna gently took in breaths as Celestia continued to run the breath through her mane. But we lied to Mom. We'll make it up to her. She then set the breast on the nightstand and placed her hose on Luna's shoulder. She then turned her little sister to face her. For right now, we have the whole day ahead of us. We can do whatever we want. Luna's head lowered to the ground. Celestia Sultan gently raised her head up to face her. We are going to have so much fun. Trust me. Luna smiled. She followed her older sister as she made her way to the balcony. Celestia leaped off and stretched her wings, gliding towards the ground. Luna leapt after her, following her older sister's example. Star Swirl finished instructing his students on a teleportation spell.
All right, class. Remember what I taught you. Focus on the location, then concentrate.
The class nodded their heads as they turned to face the large green field. Star Swirl then called out one of his students.
Buttons, you start.
He pointed to the outer field, a long green plain that seemed to stretch for miles. A lilac unicorn closed her eyes tightly, her face intensifying, as if concentrating with all her might. Her horn started to glow with a pink light, enveloping her in her radiance. A few moments, she lay her fast with a burst of light. Only a second later, another burst of light appeared in the field, and when it dissipated, Buttons reappeared. She looked around her as she couldn't believe what had happened. Buttons got a wide smile on her face as she looked down and down. I did it! She exclaimed. The other students cheered. They all seemed eager to want to try their luck, hopping up and down with a grin across their faces. Star Swirl stepped forward, a smile on his face.
Excellent work, Buttons.
He shouted towards her. He then turned to the other students.
Fizzy, your turn.
Before the turquoise mare could step forward, a loud, gruff voice came from behind Star Swirl.
Star Swirl!
Star Swirl rolled his eyes, knowing exactly who the voice came from. He turned around to see a dark red Pegasus on a steel helmet.
We need to talk.
Pegasus said in an almost growl-like tone. Star Swirl simply smiled.
Good morning to you too, General Hurricane.
He then turned back to the students.
Continue taking turns teleporting, students.
After a short jaunt away from the field, Star Swirl finally asked,
So, What's this about, General?
Another day with the famous General Hurricane was more than he could tolerate. But the Queen trusted him, and when he actually used his brain, was a brilliant tactician and was always loyal to his country. However, he had less appalling aspects of him. A lot less appealing aspects.
You know darn well what this is about!
The General snapped. Despite the General's abruptness, Starswell kept his composure, but that didn't stop him from rolling his eyes.
The princesses again.
The General hovered over the ground, allowing his front host to fly to the air.
Who else?
He turned around and started to hover back and forth as he was pacing.
Those little dwarfs are skipping class again!
Starswell shook his head and smiled.
Not the way I heard. The Queen said that he was sick, and he couldn't attend class.
Hurricane rolled his eyes.
I've seen that kind of thing for those too! They've tried multiple times to get out of class!
He then held his head high and puffed out his bottle up.
Not that I ever fooled me!
He proudly announced. Starswell was all too familiar with Hurricane's history with the princesses. The General was a strict officer. Didn't offer room for fun and relaxation. Private Patsy, for the short time that Starswell knew him, described him as a storm with a very short fuse. Once Starswell got to know Hurricane better, he realized how much of an understatement that was. It wasn't made any better by Celestia and Luna's rambunctious nature. In the short time he had been teaching the princesses, Starswell learned that the girls loved to have enjoyment, and he wanted to share it with the others. After learning this, he became focused on allowing the students the fun they wanted, but still giving them the lessons they needed. But clearly the General was unable to pick up on this. General Hurricane only thought of them as disrespectful children who broke the rules for the pleasure of tormenting them.
The girls aren't evil, General. They are just children. Never said they were evil! He shouted. He said maybe once. Twice.
He murmured under his breath. Despite the General trying to hide his whisper, Starswell raised his eyebrows as he heard every word. Then he shook his head and faced Starswell again.
Not the point! What's the point? Here's the point! Those kids are skipping class, and I ain't to catch them!
Starswell rolled his eyes and lifted his hoof up.
General, the Queen gave me her assurance. The girls are ill. According to her orders, no pony is allowed to see them unless they request it. It's a conspiracy, I tell you!
It took every ounce of restraint Starswell had in his body to not place his hoof on his forehead and shake his head. He simply took a deep breath and took a step forward towards the General. Starswell placed his hoof on the General's shoulder.
Don't you think you're letting your past experiences with the girls cloud your judgment?
The General's eyes widened for a moment as if he was shocked. They then narrowed as he spoke, sporting a vicious look.
What? My judgment clouding? I only know those brats will do anything to get out of a hard day's work! General, you have been working non-stop for the past 6 weeks.
Starswell pointed out.
I suggest you take a day off and relax.
The General took a deep breath and started to storm off.
I tell you, those kids are up to something!
He turned to face Starswell, pointing himself in his direction.
I know they are!
Starswell switched his gaze, trying not to look the General in the eye. Then something caught his eye. From the highest point of the tower, he saw 2 figures descending to the ground by their wings. A pale white alicorn with a blue alicorn not far behind. Starswell smiled as they moved through the ground and out of sight. Starswell then faced the General as he turned around, storming off.
Just try not to think about the girls. Just try to relax.
He turned back to the field, where his other students awaited him. Celestia and Luna made their way to the edge of the small town outside of Canterlot. They didn't want to be princesses today. They just wanted to be 2 girls out and having fun. Celestia and Luna couldn't help but view the world around them. There was just so much to see and so much to do. Pony stood on the sides of the street, selling whatever items he wanted to sell. From food to jewelry, from diningware to fashion accessories, Celestia and Luna couldn't help but eye the merchandise that the suppliers guaranteed would satisfy them. Celestia and Luna would indulge themselves to some of their merchandise, such as the magnificent twisted bread treat that the merchant called the pretzel. I'm with you girls on that! Go for that pretzel! The salted treat made their taste buds dance as they bit into it. Celestia loved them so much that she purchased a second after finishing her first. Luna couldn't help but laugh as Celestia acted like a little filly in a candy store. After finishing her second, Celestia heavily considered taking a third, but Luna swayed her that they would spend the whole day at the pretzel stand, and she continued. Okay, completely off topic, guys, but I just did a look for Luna and a pretzel, and I found 2 really excellent photos of the Celestia and Luna pretzels, including one where Luna is throwing pretzels onto an alicorn fly. and it looks silly. This is my life, people. The two sisters made their way to one of the dressmaking stores in the area. Celestia and Luna modeled whatever hat, scarf, or shoes that caught her eye. Celestia wrapped herself in a red velvet scarf, slipped on a pair of bright pink shoes, and topped her head with a sun hat. She looked at herself in the mirror, pretending to be a high-class member of society, prancing around the store and speaking in a high-class tone. Luna then took her turn to model equally exquisite accessories, such as a black sun hat, a large pair of ebony glasses, and with a dark velvet scarf. The two posed in mirrors, continuing their mimicry of high society ponies. The store was filled with sounds of laughter and mocking elegant voices, as Celestia and Luna tried outfit after outfit. Their nature caused them to get a few strange looks from onlookers. Luna lowered her head and blessed, but Celestia seemed to laugh and smile as they told her a joke. Luna started to feel a little better as she joined her sister's laughter. I'm getting music montages in my head. After several dozen more outfits and laughing at each other's attempts to snob the other, Celestia and Luna made their way back to the streets and began wandering through town, looking for their next fun activity. The girls happened upon a tent and was a large stage in front of it. They made their way into the crowd. Celestia looked up to the stage to see a group of performers. Upon the stage, two mares and a single stallion enacting a scene of a troubled romance. The scene spoke of one of a mare forced to a marriage with another stallion, rather than the one her heart desired. The scene continued, the other bear counterpart, to speak of how she would turn the stallion she was being forced to marry, but she was unable to. Celestia couldn't take the eyes off the set. The story was entrancing. The words that were spoken were fluid and in perfect harmony. She was only distracted when she felt movement by her side. She looked down to see Luna desperately trying to poke her over the heads of ponies above her. Luna started to paint an expression of irritation, as it seemed every time she tried to see what was going on, she was blocked by another member of the audience. Celestia smiled as she kneeled down to Luna's side. Luna gave a glance to her sister and smiled.
Oh, don't you dare. Don't you dare, Fick. Don't you dare. I'm trying to survive.
Without exchanging a word, Luna climbed up on Celestia's back. No! Celestia slowly rose to her feet, as the two kept their eyes on the performance before them. They were treated to a comical story of love, magic, and mystical creatures. Celestia and Luna laughed as the fairy trickster cast a spell on the wrong stallion, causing him to fall in love with another mare. Whoa! That's something you don't see every day! A Midsummer's Night's Dream. When the trickster transformed the pony into a chicken, and the fairy queen fell in love with him, they couldn't control themselves. All through the performance, they were laughing, giggling, celebrating their performance before them. As the troupe took their final bows, Celestia and Luna made their way out of the crowd, with bright smiles on their faces. Gerald Hurricane stopped by a local diner for a bite to eat and a place to collect his thoughts. The princesses still corrupted his every thought. They were troublemakers, and Celestia was the worst of them all. She would rally up her fellow classmates, and they would often do something that was both destructive and against the rules. There was kind of a time where Celestia had turned a pool that was only to be used for intense water training into a pool party, as he called it. He would have stopped it, but had he received a letter only moments before about a meeting with the Queen. However, it turns out Celestia had forged that letter. Not that he had proof, but deep down he knew it was her. And that was the least despicable thing he ever did. She carried out many of her wars with food, or food fights, as he called them. Probably worst of all, she turned her famous training course into a playground. The thing that irked him the most about the young princess is that no matter how much he detested her, every pony else seemed to love her. She almost seemed drawn to her like a moth to a flame. Hurricane slunk in a stool and rubbed his forehead. His mind was so distracted by his memories of the past 6 weeks, he didn't notice the plate of cabbage and parrots before him. He sighed heavily as Star Souls words repeated in his mind.
Maybe he was right. Maybe the girls are sick and I'm overreacting.
He straightened his posture and looked at the carrot to his face, teeth ripping into it.
After all, the Queen checked on them personally, and if the Queen says they're sick, then that must be the truth.
Hurricane smiled as he lifted his mug to his face and drank. As the cider slid down his throat, something caught his eye. Just out the window, a figure passed by a small diner, smiling in laughter. It looked like a pale white alicorn with a long mane. In shock, He spat out the cider from his mouth violently. It must have been a mistake. His eyes were playing tricks on him. His own paranoia out to get him. But when he looked down again, there was no mistaking it. It was her. It was Celestia and her sister Luna. There they were, hopping onto a wagon, destined for wherever they wanted to go.
I knew it!
He exclaimed. Had his mind been paying attention to his surroundings, he would have noticed the tired dyer turning toward him. But his mind was on no such thing. He only thought about Celestia, and how she had gotten away with every single evil deed he had committed. But not today. Today she was going to be caught red-hoofed. He leapt off his stool and darted out the door. Celestia wasn't going to beat him. Not this time. Celestia and Luna sat in the chariot, taking in the scene around them. The city was small but peaceful. The buildings, bright reds and oranges and purples, made it as if the city was a painting of sunset, even during the daytime. Celestia could only imagine what it might look like during the night. She looked out the window as many ponies passed by, minding their own business. Celestia stretched out her hoof and waved to them, hoping they would wave back. For every pony that ignored her or gave her a raised eyebrow, she received a friendly smile and wave. She wondered what she could do to get every pony to smile. She looked up to the sky as she noticed the sun shining brightly. The soft breeze blew against her hair as she soaked up the sun. Then Celestia felt a nudge on her shoulder. Tia! Luna's voice didn't sound like a cheery voice that she had expected. It sounded very concerned and worried. She turned towards her sister. Luna was racked with anxiety as she pointed out the back of the carriage. Celestia looked out to where her sister pointed to see a red Pegasus giving chase in her chariot. Celestia felt her pulse pick up as the image of General Hurricane slowly started to get closer. Suddenly, the sun seemed a little darker, as it mirrored their situation. Luna leaned into Celestia's ear. What are we going to do? Celestia's mind quickly went to work. She leaned forward and spoke to the ponies dragging the carriage. I'll pay you double to go faster, please! The ponies each gave each other a look.
Okay, but it's your money, lady.
With that, the ponies picked up their pace, but it wouldn't be enough. Hurricane would still catch up. If anything, they only bought them a few moments. Celestia started to think of a plan. Luna looked up to Celestia to give a terrifying look on her face, her eyes begging for a way out. Luna just turned towards her with a smile. Somehow, that was enough to get Luna to smile as well. Celestia still didn't have a plan, but at the very least, Luna wasn't afraid anymore. Celestia took another quick glance around her to notice a quick corner to take a turn. She leaned towards the ponies. Turn here! The ponies turned sharply around the corner, causing Celestia and Luna to jerk to the right. Celestia was still unsure what to do, but she knew she would come up with something fast, or their day of fun would be cut far too short. Gerald Hurricane was picking up carrots. Despite picking up his pace, he cursed himself for being spotted so easily. Regardless, he knew Celestia's game was up. He was a mere feet from the carrots, and it would only be a few seconds before he had them. The carrots sharply turned a corner. Gerald Hurricane pushed himself to go faster, almost failing to notice a pedestrian tying the street. The green pony spotted Hurricane coming straight for him at an incredible speed, and his reflex cowered into a fatal position. Hurricane was able to pull himself in the nick of time, narrowly missing the bystander. After a moment of calm, the bystander stood up with rage on his face.
Watch where you're flying, you idiot!
Hurricane turned towards the pony.
Why don't you watch for oncoming Pegasi?
The pony's mouth dropped as if he would be insulted.
You have the whole sky to use!
Hurricane would have retorted, but his mind quickly went back to the matter at hoof. The princesses were getting away, and he needed to catch them. He ignored the bystander and flew off after the chariot. After turning the corner, he finally spotted the wagon that carried Celestia and Luna. It had slowed down quite a bit from when he last saw it. No doubt, she had figured that he had lost him. He smiled at the golden opportunity. He darted straight for the carriage with immense speed. He couldn't wait to see the shocked look on their faces when he opened the carriage doors just to see them taking it back to the castle. Their mother would be sorely disappointed in their antics, and Celestia would no doubt receive her just deserts. With a burst of speed, he dove straight in front of the carriage. In surprise, the ponies drawing the carriage stopped in their tracks. They glared at the Pegasus before them.
Where's the hay is your deal, pal?
Hurricane ignored the ponies and worked towards the side of the wagon.
Alright, you little twerps!
He placed his hose on the doors and flung them open.
I've got you!
He was stopped by the sight of an old stallion and an elderly mare embracing each other. their backs against the other side of the carrots. Lead away, Trouble, the stallion whimpered. Please, we don't have butts on us, the mare cried. Hurricane felt a void in the pit of his stomach. His heart dropped into that void as his mind finally took the event before him. He gave a nervous smile that made Nixus giggle.
This is not what this looks like.
The elderly couple turned to each other, and then their eyebrows raised. The stallion turned to him. What's this about? Hurricane felt a ray of hope in his heart. His chance to catch Celestia was still within his grasp.
You see, I'm looking for 2 girls. They were in this carriage before you.
Stallion turned towards his wife. This mare simply shook her head and spoke. We didn't see any pony in this carriage before us. And with those words, like the girls, that ray of hope vanished. Celestia smiled as she and Luna continued on their way. She counted herself lucky when that old couple appeared on the side of the street. All she needed to do was pay for their wagon ride, and they would keep silent about where they were or where they were going. A simple and honest trade. She almost patted herself on the back for her quick thinking. Luna skipped across the street. That's very close. Luna smiled as she gently nudged her. I told you we ain't getting caught. Luna looked at Celestia and lowered her head down. Maybe we should go home. I don't think we should push our luck. Celestia leaned down towards Luna's ear. But the day's still early, and we're having so much fun. Luna turned away from Celestia and bit her lip. Come on, Luna. Let's go to the beach. Celestia suggested. We wanted to go all summer. Let's just go have some fun. Luna smiled, but tried to hide it from Celestia. Celestia wasn't fooled, though, so she continued. We could go swimming, play volleyball, build a sandcastle. Celestia gave a gentle nudge to her sister's side, causing her to giggle. Luna turned to Celestia, giving a smile, and with that, they were on their way to the beach. I swear, if this keeps this up, I'm going to die by the end of this fic. Queen Faust made her way to the conference room, where the Griffin King awaited her appearance. Her guards opened the doors, and she was greeted by a large griffin with a delightful smile on its face.
Ah! Queen Faust of Equestria! His deep voice welcomed her. A great honor to be here in your presence.
Faust smiled and bowed her head politely. The table before them was littered with food and drink to feed an army, yet only 4 were in their room. Thank you, Silver Talon. She entered the room and sat in a chair before her. The Griffin King sat in a seat, only across from her. Before we begin, may I introduce you to my retainer, Sir Roland? She gestured behind her to the purple stallion.
Roland bowed his head. It is an honor, King Silver Talon.
Silver Talon smiled.
Thank you, Sir Roland. And this?
He pointed to a large black griffin behind him, who Faust failed to notice when he walked into the room. He shocked her to see another figure in the room.
Is Raven, my shadow.
Raven didn't speak. He only bowed his head to Faust. King Silver Talon gave out a laugh.
Ha 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 ha! Forgive him. He very rarely speaks. But he has proven his loyalty time and time again.
Faust smiled and turned her attention back towards the Griffin King. My friend, we have been holding these meetings for a long time. It warms my heart to know that peace between our 2 kingdoms can be achieved.
Silver Talon smiled. As it does mine. Ponies are not the only creatures who seek friendship.
He then clapped his claws together, like a signal. Raven picked up the plate that sat upon the table and presented it in front of Faust.
These are special treats made from the finest berries in the Griffin Empire.
They are Griffin scones. Ow, down, 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 go, deep down! Faust's horn started to glow as one of the breaded treats rose from the platter. She bit into it, and as she did, the creamy, fruity filling seemed to melt in her mouth. She gave a satisfied moan as she smiled. We do not have flavors like this in Equestria. Silver Talon smiled as Raven came by with a tray, holding it for his master. Silver Talon grabbed one of the treats.
They are my favorite. We call them donuts.
I Faust before him. He bit into it and gave a smiling face. Faust sensed that he wasn't lying about that. After swallowing his treat, Silver Talon spoke.
Do you have any children, Queen Faust?
Faust smiled. I have 2 wonderful daughters. Her horn started to glow as he placed 2 chalices on the table. She sat one before the Griffin King and one at her side. They are my whole world.
Silver Talon nodded. I have a son. He's a brass lad, but he's got a good head on his shoulders, and a good heart in his chest.
Faust lifted the bottle of cider sitting on the table. She poured each into glasses carefully. Perhaps I should meet your son one day. She smiled. Silvertown smiled as his claw gripped his glass.
Perhaps I could meet your daughters today.
Faust turned to glance and bit her lip. I'm sorry, but they are very sick today. Silvertown's eyes widened. His smile vaporized into a frown.
Oh dear.
He leaned forward.
It's not serious, is it?
Faust shook her head. I do not believe so. But they did not feel well this morning, and I told them to rest it out. Silvertown's smile reappeared on his face like magic. He looked at the glass in his air.
To your children's speedy recovery!
Faust giggled a bit, and raised her glass in the air as well. To our country's attaining peace. With a ding of the glasses, they drank to the good fortune that was to come in future days. The calming ocean breeze soared over the sandy beach. The relaxing sounds of the waves ebbing and flowing against the shore surrounded the air, only to be overpowered by the laughter and sounds of ponies enjoying their last day of summer. Celestia and Luna had set themselves on the beach and started to build their sandcastle. Luna wanted to be the biggest and best sandcastle on the beach, and Celestia wasn't about to let her sister down. Their progress was astounding. Their castle wall was panned out as long as Celestia's foreleg on all four sides. Their towers were almost as tall as Luna, and they were determined to make them taller if possible. The thick walls were carefully sculpted to resemble their home, with turrets at each corner. Inside, they carefully crafted a little village for the walls to protect them, as its two beloved princesses. Then, like a boulder against their sandy walls, a heavy volleyball crashed into the collection of towers. The towers collapsed, causing them to deform into a goblet of sand. Celestia and Luna turned to see a brown mare with a red mane trying toward them, a cruel smile on her face. That was a pretty good shot. Celestia raised her eyebrow as she turned to Luna, who had a sound frown on her face. Her normal smile vanished from her face, and she continued to stare at Luna, who could only look upon the destruction of her hard work. The mare then spoke again. Pass me a ball, rookie. Celestia turned upwards to the mare and stood up. I will, as soon as you apologize for ruining our sandcastle. The mare's mouth dropped as she started to laugh. Aw, did I ruin the widow castle? She mocked the baby speech patterns. Celestia took a step forward, her face livid with anger. However, a tight grip around her hind leg stopped her from charging. She looked down to see Luna, holding her hind leg as if to stop her. Luna's eyes were wet with tears, but they weren't in front of the sandcastle. It was genuine fear for Celestia. She didn't want to see her sister get hurt. Celestia smiled and embraced Luna in her wing. Celestia then picked up the ball with her horn. She looked back at the mare. Tell you what, how about we play? The mare raised her eyebrow. She gave a giggle. You want to play, huh? You might be new here, but I'm the queen of this beach. Celestia ignored that last remark. If we win, you apologize. And if I win, you lick my hooves clean. Luna looked up to Celestia as if she was still uncertain. Celestia just gave a reassuring wink. She wasn't exactly new to volleyball. In fact, on the slim chance they ever played, she was many of the best opponents they'd ever seen. She felt an overwhelming sense of confidence she could and would win. The two made their way to the volleyball net. A crowd of ponies started to gather around to see the competition. Celestia couldn't help but listen to the crowd whisper to each other. Apparently, no pony stands up to Cookie. Celestia guessed that was the mare's name. Cookie took the ball and hose and turned to Celestia, who stood on the other side of the court to be drawing the sand. No flying, no magic. Celestia nodded. She was already familiar with the rules. Besides, she was facing an earth pony. Using her wings and magic wouldn't be fair. Cookie tossed the bear up into the air and leapt after it. She hit the ball as hard as she could towards Celestia's side of the court. Celestia's reflexes picked up and dove for the ball as fast as she could to her left. But no matter how fast she was, the ball was just out of reach. Celestia looked up to see Cookie giving a smug look. Celestia hadn't expected her serve to be quite so fast and powerful. She knew she would have to be quicker to catch it. It was her turn to serve. Celestia took the ball in her hose and gave a mighty blow, and sent the ball soaring towards Cookie. Cookie dove for it, ducking into the air. Quickly, she got up and sent it flying towards Celestia. Celestia dove for the ball, barely hitting it. She quickly got up, kicked the ball aloft before giving it a powerful buckle in the air. Cookie attempted to get it, but the ball moved far too fast. Cookie stomped the ground in irritation and glared at Celestia, who only replied with a smile and wink. The battle was a fierce competition, with neither side backing down. It seemed like the whole beach had attended this one volleyball game. The crowd was following Luna with their cheers to Celestia. However, at a little time she was able to rest and listen on the crowd. She couldn't hear any pony cheer for Cookie. She sort of felt sorry for her. The game caused the two players to dart across the entire court almost the entire time. Cookie hit the ball toward her, sending it like a thunderbolt across the court. Celestia's reflexes guided her to the other side of the court with as much speed as her body could master. She dove to the ground, sand rubbing against her skin. Her hoof tapped against the ball, sending it into the air. She quickly made her way to her feet, and sending the ball back against the court. She watched as Cookie darted across the court, performing the same maneuver. The cycle repeated with very few mistakes being made by either party. She should have felt tired. She'd never played one-on-one before, but it must have been the exhausting thing she had ever done. And yet she felt fine. A little tired, maybe, but she could give her best game. She began to wonder why. Did the answer hit her like a rock? Those 6 long weeks at General Hooker Kane's arrival camp finally done her some good. She was working as hard as she had ever been, but because the General would make this routine constant, she was already ready to use it, even if she didn't know it. She smiled a little. Looked like she owes the General some credit after all. "You gonna serve or what?" Cookie shouted. Celestia nodded and held the ball up in her hoof. She then turned to Luna, who was cheering as loud as she could for her to win. Celestia tossed the ball into the air and served it with all her might. It was down to the last point. The point for the game was decided here. The ball soared towards Cookie's side, and she was able to get it with ease. It flew back to Celestia, then back to Cookie. Celestia's again! The pattern repeated itself. The two ponies diving for nearly impossible shots, only to get back up to make another impossible shot. The suspense killed all the cheering around them. Causing it to go dead silence, the two waged war. Cookie hit the ball back to Celestia. Celestia dove forward, catching the ball with the tip of her hoof. But instead of perfectly straight up, like she had hoped, the ball started to fly behind her. She quickly turned on her back, using her hind leg, bucked the ball just enough to buy her time. She quickly got up and leaped after the ball, giving it another buck. The ball flew fast enough to keep out Cookie's hooves. The game was over. Celestia had won. The silence was replaced with the cheers of beachgoers. The crowd went wild as proof presented itself before them. Cookie, so-called Queen of the Beach, had been dethroned. Luna made her way to Celestia's side and gave her a tight hug. "You did it!" Luna shouted. Celestia returned her sister's hug and giggled. She couldn't help but look toward the other side of the court. Cookie picked herself up. Her eyes widened and her mouth dropped. Celestia released Luna, and they made their way to the other side of the court. Cookie lowered her head and fell on her rump, hiding her face. "What do you want?" she whimpered. Celestia raised her eyebrow. She couldn't believe what her ears were hearing. It sounded like she was crying. She turned her attention to the ocean and got an idea. She smiled. "Luna and I were about to do some swimming. Want to join us?" Cookie didn't move for a second. She poked a single eye from out of her mane. They were red and tears were flowing down her revealed cheek. "What?" Luna turned to Celestia with an eyebrow raised, as if to ask what Celestia was doing. Celestia just kept on smiling. "Come on, it'll be fun." Cookie revealed her entire face and smiled, but only for a moment. She looked away as tears began to fall. Celestia reached out her hoof, waiting for Cookie's. A moment passed, and Celestia still kept her hoof out. A moment still, and still was Celestia's persistent. Finally, Cookie took Celestia's hoof, and Celestia held her to her feet, and the three made their way to the water. Celestia dove into the water with a giggle, and Luna not far behind. Cookie, however, didn't seem like she was sure what to do. All she did was float and keep her distance from Celestia and Luna. However, Celestia urged her to swim over to them. Cookie bit her lip and started to make her way towards them. Celestia smiled. Suddenly, she felt a wave of water hit the side of her face. She turned to see Luna giggling as she swept another wave toward her. Celestia smiled as she swam towards Luna, and wrapped her little sister in her hooves. "You got me wet!" Celestia playfully accused. Luna struggled to break her sister's grip, but was unable to escape her bear hug. "Now it's my turn." Almost instinctively, Luna held her breath with Luna and Celestia doing the same. Celestia dove backwards until they were both completely submerged in the water. A moment later, Celestia and Luna reappeared to the surface. "Okay, look, guys, this is getting too sleep for me. This has been really, really freaking adorable. Almost as adorable as watching My Neighbor Totoro while petting a little baby kitten. So, I'm going to do something manly for a bit. I'm gonna play with my Batarang for a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. I feel better now. I think that my manhood has returned. I swear to Celestia on high, if this keeps up, I will just keel over dead. Oh, this is just too sweet. Oh. Luna giggled along her sister as they took away as much water they could from their faces. Celestia released Luna from her grip and dove back into the water. She made her way behind Cookie. Finally, she emerged from the water and wrapped her arms around Cookie. What the hey? Cookie shouted. Your turn, Celestia said. Hold your breath. As soon as Cookie felt Celestia dragged them both under, she held her breath as quickly as she could. They were both submerged for a moment or two, but then re-emerged to the surface. Cookie wiped away the water from her face and turned to face Celestia, only poked out her eyes and horn from the wire. Are you crazy? Celestia quickly pulled the rest of her face out of the wire and blew a long stream of water at Cookie's face. Instinctively, Cookie splashed at Celestia, giving out a giggle. Whether she actually meant to, or it was slipped unclear, but one thing was clear. She was having fun. Celestia retaliated with a splash of her own. Suddenly, Luna wrapped her hose around Celestia. Celestia turned her head and laughed. Celestia told Luna to hold her breath and leaned back, engulfing them both. After coming up, Cookie and Luna started to splash at Celestia. The three continued their war, laughing the entire time. After soaking each other, the three made their way back to the beach, where they started to build a sandcastle from before. It was coming along better than the first one. Wow, Cookie, I didn't know you were so good at building sandcastles, Luna stated. Cookie started to blush. I grew up on this beach. I used to come here every day. She looked away and frowned. Look, I'm sorry for everything I did. Celestia implied. It's all right. Everything worked out all right. Just then, a group of ponies came to them, looking straight at Celestia. Hey, Celestia, one of the stallions spoke. His face started to get red as he approached her. Celestia turned her attention towards the group. The stallion was shoved forward by his friends, as if they wanted to say it was too embarrassing to ask. The stallion scratched the back of his neck. We were wondering if you would show us those sweet volleyball moves. Celestia smiled as he stood up. Luna turned towards Celestia and placed her hoof on her leg. Kia! Celestia turned toward her. It'll be a minute, I promise. Celestia continued further down the beach, following the stallions. Luna lowered her head and sunk to her belly. Cookie placed her hoof on Luna's shoulder. But Luna just got up and walked away, slinking into the sand. Cookie placed herself up and raced after Celestia. Celestia started to explain everything she had learned when Cookie came and grabbed her by the hoof. Celestia forcefully removed her hoof from Cookie's. What's the big idea, Cookie? Cookie pointed back to Luna. That! Celestia looked back towards Luna, who was lying in the sand. Even from a distance, Celestia could tell she was crying. Celestia felt a sharp pain in her heart. She didn't expect to hurt Luna, as she never wanted to. A voice came from behind them. Celestia? Celestia turned to see the group waiting on her to continue. Celestia told the ball back to them. Sorry, every pony, but my sister comes first. She turned back towards Luna, but then something else caught her eye. In the distance, a red Pegasus was surveying the area. It was General Hurricane. Her mind started panicking, as her thoughts consumed with an escape route. Luna was too far away to call her without yelling. As she did, Hurricane was certainly here. As she tried to run for her, she would be spotted. As he did nothing, Luna would certainly be spotted by Hurricane. With Luna's head in her foreleg, it would be impossible for Luna to see her coming. I need to get Luna out of here! Celestia whispered to Cookie. She started looking around for anything she could use to distract the General. The distraction came to her when a tooth touched her shoulder. Leave that to me, Cookie replied. General Hurricane had lost Celestia's trail earlier, but wasn't about to lose her again. He was ready to do whatever it took to bring Celestia to justice. He spent his time trying to guess Celestia's next move. Then he realized that a beach was nearby. It was too good an opportunity for Celestia to pass up. Hurricane surveyed the beach carefully, knowing that the young princess had to be here somewhere. Finally, his eyes set on the young white alicorn, rushing over to her sister's side. He smiled as he knew he had finally had them. Just as he was about to rush over to them, A mare in front of him stopped and blocked his path. "Oh my gosh!" the mare shouted. "You're General Hurricane!" As he gave a high-pitched squeal. "I'm a huge fan. Tell me about the time you were frozen in that ice against those Wendigos." General Hurricane attempted to move around the mare, but he was still blocking his path and vision everywhere he went.
Excuse me, miss,
Before he could finish, the mare spoke again. "Oh, tell me about the time you led the Pegasi against the Ursa Major." Hurricane gave a slight chuckle as the awful memories haunted his mind. He pushed those thoughts out of his mind again and tried to move around her.
Listen, I don't really have time for...
Or how about that time you threw through a cavern of cage trolls? Hurricane gave a low growl as he spread his wings and took the air. Once he was high above the earth mare, he scouted the area in search of the two sisters. After a moment, he spotted them heading down the beach. As he moved forward, a Pegasus blocked his path. "General Hurricane, I'm like your biggest fan," she shouted. Then another Pegasus appeared. "No, I am! No, I am! No, I am!" A swarm of Pegasi surrounded the general, telling him how great he was and how they wanted to hear tales of his life. The general only growled in frustration as he fought his way through the crowd into the ponies he found himself in. Celestia and Luna made their way back into the city. Celestia smiled as her plan seemed to work. The ponies on the beach were able to distract Hurricane long enough for them to get away. Celestia placed her left on his shoulder. "Looks like we gave them the slip." Luna shoved her sister's hoof away and started trotting away. "Leave me alone!" she moaned. Celestia turned towards Luna. "Luna, what's the matter?" Luna turned to Celestia. Her eyes red and tears were soaking her cheeks. "Do you not like me?" she whimpered. Celestia's jaw dropped as the words reached her ears. "Not like you? What are you talking about, Luna?" Luna whimpered, freaking her speech. You always want to spend..." She let out another whimper. "With other ponies." Celestia wrapped her hose around Luna. "Luna, I would never not like you." Luna put her head on Celestia's chest as tears choked her coat. Celestia's eyes started to water as he held her tightly. "I will always love you." Celestia kissed her forehead as tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry." Luna stood her buying away from Celestia. Celestia gave a slight smile as he gently scratched her horn against Luna's spine. "Hey, I can change!" Luna gave a slight smile as the horn tickled her. Then Celestia stretched her forelegs and started tickling Luna. "I can change!" Luna turned her sauce into screeches of laughter as she fought against her sister's tickling hooves. A moment later, the two embraced. Luna sunk her head into Celestia's chest. "Do you think ponies will love me like they do you?" Celestia moved her head to face Luna, wiped a tear from her face. "Any pony who doesn't love you the way I do is a fool." Luna smiled as she rested her head on Celestia's chest. Celestia smiled as he got a wonderful idea. "Come on. I know what's going to cheer you up." Okay, the entire exchange made water come out of my eyes. Celestia and Luna made their way to a local candy store. Dream on, teenage queen, prettiest girl you ever seen." There were very few things that the pair enjoyed more than candy, and they were going to spoil themselves with whatever they wanted. As they entered the store, the stallion greeted with a smile. A group of colts and fillies were rampantly asking for their orders as the stallion would rush back, grabbing whatever they wanted. And for all his moving around and working, he always seemed to have a smile on his face. Maybe it was because he loved what he did, or maybe because he loved seeing the children having a smile on his face. Finally, after a few moments, Luna and Celestia stepped up to the front desk. "Ah, what can I get you for you to do today?" he greeted, with the same smile he had been carrying around since he arrived. Celestia placed her hoof on her chin and started, staring at the wide variety of assorted sweet. "I'll take one of those." She pointed to a long strand of red sweet. "I'll take one of those." She pointed to a large chocolate oval. "3 of those." She continued to point. "I'll take 2 of those, 1 of those, 6 of those, 8 of those, 3 of those." She pointed to the top shelf with a jar of white orbs. "And I have no idea what those are, but I want 6 of them. 9 of those, and 12 of those." After getting all of Celestia's requests, the stallion gave a smile. "Will that be all?" Celestia shook her head. "That's just for me." She placed a hoof on Luna's shoulder. "What do you want, Luna?" Luna hopped up to the desk and started flapping her wings. "I have just one of those." She pointed over to the same red sweet Celestia wanted. Then Luna pointed to a chocolate oval.
On one of those, two of those, one of those, six of those, eight of those, three of those, six of those, and nine of those, and 12 of those.
The stallion shook his head, but he kept a smile, and his face gathered on Luna's order. After paying for the order, Celestia and Luna started to pass out their candy and shared it with the fillies and colts around the store. The Stormgoer gave them a raised eyebrow. Celestia simply gave a wink. I had to make sure I had enough to share with my friends. Again, the stallion shook his head and smiled away. Celestia and Luna talked among the children as they passed out their candy and laughed out among them. I swear, those two are going to become princesses one day. They stated that they never met any pony who had such boundless generosity. Celestia gave a laugh as she stuffed a chocolate orb in her mouth. It seemed to melt in her mouth as she gave a sigh. She turned to Luna as she gave a series of licks to her lollipop. Luna was all smiles as she leaned against her older sister. Celestia embraced Luna with a hug. Celestia gazed at the other fillies and colts replied, It's more fun to share everything. Luna looked up to Celestia and smiled.
Come look what I made.
Celestia followed Luna to a small table, where Luna had placed her candy in a strange pattern that sort of resembled a pony. But the shape had large holes in them, as if she didn't have enough to fill its entire portion. What is it, Luna? Luna sat in her chair and pointed to the large white unicorn shape.
That's you.
Celestia smiled as she examined the image. Then to look to his left to see a smaller unicorn shape. Is that you? Celestia asked. Luna nodded. Excuse me, I'm going to die of diabetic shock now! No! Darn you, Spider! This thing is getting the doorbells! I swear, folks, I promise you, I'll read something manly later on, okay? 2 weeks from now, I'll do Mirror Steel, alright? I'll make it all up to you. I'll read something about manly men, okay? I promise you this. No, she said to point to the centerpiece, separating the two. An almost reticular shape shown by its four corners with small pieces of candy.
It's equalness.
Celestia raised her eyebrow and turned towards Luna. What's equalness? Luna turned to her older sister and tilted her head.
Don't you know?
Celestia shook her head and yielded to her side. But I like to, she stated. She smiled patiently and waited for Luna to tell her the story.
Well, equalness was said to be the first alicorn, the first pony.
Luna explained.
He was created by a goddess who wanted to have a friend. The goddess created him so he couldn't be alone. At first, they were the best of friends. They did everything together.
Luna lowered her glance.
But then, one day, the goddess decided to make even more friends. So, she made other creatures. The birds, the trees, the insects, the rabbits, and everything until the world was filled with other creatures, great and small.
Celestia's ears continued to focus slowly on Luna's words.
The goddess was happy because now she had hundreds of friends. She loved every single one of them, but she forgot about the first friend she had made. The one who had spent all her time with before. Equalness was sad. He was alone, and none of the other creatures wanted to play with him. The goddess had made so many friends, and he never saw her.
Luna's voice became softer.
So Equalness ran away. He ran away for many years and wasn't seen again. But when the goddess learned he was missing, she went in search of him. She searched high and low for the land for him, trying to find him. She never saw him. However, she discovered 3 strange creatures in the middle of the forest. A unicorn, an earth pony, and a pegasus. She did not remember creating them. She made a promise to love all creatures equally and departed the world, never again to play the creatures down below.
Celestia's heart fell heavier after hearing the tale. She was silent for several moments. Her mind contemplated on such a story. She wrapped a foreleg around Luna's body. That was a wonderful story. Luna looked up to her and smiled. Did Mother tell you that story? Luna looked down and shook her head.
No, I read it in the stars.
Celestia tilted her head and raised her eyebrow. The stars? Luna nodded.
Yes, the stars tell all kinds of stories.
Celestia placed her elf on her chin, leaned into Luna's ear. What'd you show me tonight? Luna's mouth opened with glee as he nodded vigorously.
Yeah, I can show you some of my favorite stories.
Celestia giggled and looked forward to hearing them. They left the candy store after saying goodbyes and buying another lollipop for the two of them. They continued to lick their sweet treat. Celestia looked up to the sky to see the sky growing darker. The sun started to set on the horizon. The sky painted a dark purple as the clouds began to glow orange and black. Celestia and Luna took a moment to admire the painting before them. After taking in the scene with the coming night, Celestia gave a gentle nudge to Luna. It was time to go home. Their day off was officially over. Their mother would return from her meeting with the Griffin King soon and would lower the sun. And they needed to be in bed before she got there. Celestia and Luna made their way outside the castle. For some reason, their luck seemed to be turning south. Guards seemed to pop up when they least expected it. Sneaking in through the sky was infinitely difficult this time around. He managed to sneak into one of the windows closest to Luna's room. Celestia poked her way into the hallway. She knew Luna's room was only a short jaunt away, and there seemed to be anybody else around. She turned to her sister.
Luna, go! Get into bed!
Luna bit her lip and gave Celestia a worried look.
What about you?
Celestia smiled and kissed Luna on the forehead.
I'll be fine. Now go!
Luna entered the window. Celestia watched as she snuck over to her bedroom door. She slid inside her room and disappeared behind a closed door. Luna was safe, but now it was her turn. She was about to make her way to the other side of the tower from the outside, but as she turned to her house, a station of guards hovered nearby. As she tried to sneak by them, she would be caught. She looked back inside and noted nobody coming. She decided she would rush into her room before she could be seen. Celestia looked inside and darted down the hall. So far, no good. No pony was coming. She sprinted down the hall, keeping her room in her sights. It was closing fast, and she couldn't count herself more fortunate. As she came to the front door, her magic started to pull it open, but then it closed suddenly. She looked up to see a red hoof slamming the door shut, and connected to that hoof was Hurricane. He gave Celestia a sly smile as he towered over her.
Hello, Your Highness.
Celestia felt a hole in the pit of her stomach start to grow. The one point she hoped not to run into. She had been careful to avoid him, planned for him, making sure she was ready. Admittedly, she got lucky a few times, but she kept one step ahead of him. Her mind went into a frenzy, desperate for a way out of this. But nothing came. Every time her brilliant mind attempted to outsmart the general, it came up empty. She was beaten.
I've been waiting for this moment all day.
Hurricane snapped, grabbed Celestia's hoof and started dragging her down the hallway. Celestia attempted to break free of the general's grip, but he didn't seem to let up. He had a grip of iron, and no matter how she struggled, she couldn't break free. Hurricane dragged her to the other side of the tower, towards Luna's room, where coincidentally her mother appeared.
Your Highness!
The general shouted. Faust turned to the general, who was dragging Celestia by her hoof. Faust gave the general a glare. General! What is the meaning of this? Why is Tia out of bed?
Cyril gave a smirk. I believe Celestia can answer that.
He gave a gentle push to Celestia, placing her in front of her mother.
Well, Celestia, do you want to tell your mother what you've been really doing all day, or you want me to?
Celestia lowered her head and closed her eyes. She didn't know what to do. She was fresh out of options. The only thing she could do was admit the truth and taste defeat. After all of her time against the general, she never actually thought she would be outsmarted by him. Well, Celestia? Her voice called to her. She looked to see a pair of scornful eyes, patiently waiting for Celestia's response. Celestia gave a deep swallow and opened her mouth to speak, but then a series of coughs was heard on the other side of the door. A little voice then came through the door.
Tia?
The Queen turned towards the hallway and opened it, and revealed Luna wrapped up in the covers of the bed, shivering. The Queen darted to her daughter's bedside.
How's my little moonshine?
She asked in her sincere voice, as she gently stroked Luna's head. Luna let out another cough.
Better.
She said in a weak voice, as if trying to convince her she was okay.
I had Tia take care of me.
The Queen turned to Celestia, who was standing outside the doorway. Tia, do you want to explain this? Celestia attempted to speak, but she wasn't sure what to say. As if Luna could sense Celestia's uncertainty, Luna spoke.
It's my fault, Mommy.
The Queen turned towards Luna and placed her hoof on her face.
I was in bed and I got sick.
She let out a series of coughs.
Tia found out earlier. I was afraid the other kids would laugh at me for being sick.
The Queen gave her a smile and giggled. Luna continued.
So, you and Tia pretended to be sick too.
The Queen leaned down to kiss Luna on the forehead. You silly. The kids at school aren't going to laugh at you for being sick. The Queen turned back to Celestia. And Tia, I do appreciate what you did for Luna. The General stepped forward as if he had something to say, but the Queen interrupted him. But next time, just tell me what you are doing. You don't have to lie to me. She stood up and placed her hoof on Celestia's shoulder. Understand? Celestia smiled and nodded. Yes, Mother, I'm sorry. The Queen kissed Celestia on the cheek. Oh, Faust knew. Faust knows Celestia was lying. She knows what really happened. She knows Celestia played hooky. Oh, you clever little minx. I bet you're just smirking all the while. The General spoke up. But Your Highness! The Queen turned to him. General, if you don't mind, my little girl needs a rest. May we take this outside? The General was stunned as his mouth hung open for a moment or two. Then finally, it must have clicked what had happened. He turned around and made his way out the door. Celestia couldn't help but turn to Luna. Gave her a wink and smile. Celestia replied in kind. She made her way out the door with her head held up high. She crept past the General and her mother. Her mother spoke directly to the General. Now, General, do you want to explain why you had my daughter by her hoof and dragging her? Her voice filled with irritation. Just then another voice came in from Celestia. She looked up to see Star Swirl barring her path. I believe I can explain that, Your Highness. The Queen turned towards Star Swirl and allowed him to speak. After hearing about the girl's condition, he personally wanted to check up on them. The Queen raised her eyebrows. He knew it was against your orders, but the truth is, Highness, he's rather fond of the girls. The General's mouth flew open. Celestia almost laughed. Thinking that his mouth was attached to his face, it would have fallen off. Star Swirl continued. He must have learned the truth about what Celestia was doing. He couldn't let her pass without being recognized for her selflessness. He turned back to Celestia. Isn't that right, Your Highness? He then gave her a wink. Celestia didn't know what the wink was for, but decided to run with it. She nodded. The Queen turned towards the General, whose mouth was still hanging open. Well, I thank you for your continued concern, General. She placed her hoof on her shoulder. You have my gratitude. I hear that you didn't like the girls. The General turned down the hallway, silently mumbling to herself. Celestia didn't hear what he was saying, nor did she care. Celestia couldn't help but smile as she trotted back to her room. She suddenly cheered, Best day ever! It's just me, or did the 6 elements pop up through this entire fic? She opened her door to her room. She knew it was. And, all because of the filly that just across the hallway. Her best friend. Her sister. Luna. Dear Princess Celestia, today I learned that siblings can be awesome. Luna looked at the windowsill, glancing up at the night sky. The stars were shining brightly tonight, as the Iwans showed Luna their magnificence. She was shaking with anticipation. It was her chance. Celestia finally appeared in her room through a door behind her. Tia! Luna rushed over to her sister, wrapping her hose around her legs. Celestia wrapped her wing around Luna. Would she still like to show me those stars? Luna looked up and nodded. She darted to the window with Celestia not far behind. She pressed herself on the windowsill as Celestia laid on the floor beside the window. Luna pointed to the sky to show 3 stars in a straight line. See that line in the stars? Celestia nodded. That's the line spent. He was a great hunter. All through the night, Luna continued to tell Celestia stories about the stars, with her constantly reminding herself, Best night ever. If you excuse me, guys, I think I need medical attention before I continue the review here. This is just kind of, Mom, could you give me something for diabetic shock? This fanfic kind of wrecked me hard. Just give me a shot right here. That doesn't...
Alright, here's some insulin.
Thank you. I promise you guys, something more manly next time. Okay, well, I'll make it out to you. We'll play football. We'll lift weights. We'll do sweaty wrestling together. I will honestly make out this thing to you, cause, oh God, this sack! It's just, oh. characterizations of everybody. This is kind of like a cuter and happier version of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, only with Celestia not being an a-hole. Instead, we saw her, more or less, being a teenager, being rambunctious and exciting, wanting to see the world and helping every pony. Throughout this entire story, we saw the foundations of what would make her into the Celestia we now know and love today. Throughout everything we saw, we could see Luna, we saw Celestia being, well, Celestia. Being friendly to another mare. And as I said earlier, my thoughts during the fic, somehow I think we saw all 6 elements. We saw Celestia's generosity. We saw Luna's loyalty. We saw Celestia's kindness. And her laughter. And magic. And we saw Luna's honesty. We saw the girls being, well, children. Sometimes we have to forget, sometimes when we look at royalty or famous people, we forget that they are human. And sometimes when we look at goddesses, we sometimes forget that sometimes even the most powerful god beings and the best written ones are those that have emotions like us. The ones that have unique bonds and are touched by our own sensibilities. We need to feel that connection, and this is what this fic works towards. It gives us a strong sense of being, well, what it's like to be young and carefree. And for Celestia and Luna, this moment is special for the two of them, as they all proceed to, well, show off what it means to be themselves. Complete with bright, happy smiles, adorable adventures, and Queen Faust acted like a mother. I'm kind of glad we didn't focus too much on Commander Hurricane, because this gave us a chance to focus greatly on the 2 sips. This fic is just adorable, and it also kind of made me think of my little brother over there. Remind myself of all the fun I had with him. And I also love the fact that weren't reminded of Luna's future turn to evil so much as who she is in her littleness, and why these two need to be together. Why Celestia and Luna have to be united, because they truly are broken without each other. Luna helps out Celestia, and Celestia helps out Luna. The sun and moon together in bondage. And hey, Spire, if you're listening to this, I just want to say from everybody here, thanks for your little fanfic section of critique. It's been a hilarious ride, and I kind of hope you do realize in the end that you do matter to everybody. Everybody here really enjoys you. And I think we're all grateful to have known you. Thanks for listening. Tomorrow, though, I got another fun fic for you, cause it's another Luna-centric. Hit it.
There's a monster assaulting Equestria, a demon from far beyond the depths, and Luna knows this. So thus, she is ready to wage her final and ultimate battle. Her weapons are armed, her teeth bared, and why the frack is Celestia not caring?
Celestia, we are too busy.
Fine, I'll go find somebody else to help me. So, coming tomorrow, Celestia and Luna's perfectly normal day. Please join us, won't you?